He's in the jail cell, then they turn around and look back, he's not in there anymore. And it's called Messiah. Then you start paying attention, he never says Assalamu alaikum. Then you start paying attention, and you got Jews, Muslims, Christians, everyone who exists in the Middle East start following this person. So then I started to think about what exactly this show, what the message that this show was trying to portray. Then I started to remember some of the conversations that me and Brother Benjamin have, or some of the conversations when we go to some of these Muslim events, and we bring up the question of whether Jesus is coming back or not. I was on YouTube pulling up some, is Jesus coming back or not? And they have credited imams, some African American, some Middle Eastern, who they're preaching volumes on Jesus coming back to affirm that he is coming back. So now, if you coming out of the Christian mentality into al-Islam, then what's the difference? Now, if you're a Muslim, and once you get past the 5 times praying and fasting during Ramadan, you start to delve into the religion, and you look up on YouTube, Jesus coming back, it puts you right back into Christianity. If you're just curious, like the brother that I was talking to, about trying to ask me questions about religion, and you turn on this show Messiah, it has totally eliminated and wiped away any practical example or interpretation of this religion, al-Islam. And when all this show is Aladdin, or the story, the magical, mystical story of Jesus. It's like something that when you go to Las Vegas and they're doing the story of Jesus Christ, a Christmas story or something. The man is abracadabra and all over the place. So they have implemented Jesus into al-Islam and giving you an interpretation of Jesus as a mystical, magical, godlike figure who's coming back as a man, but he's going to come back and all he's doing is touching people on the forehead like the stories that we grew up hearing, and healing the person that got eczema and touching them and now they don't got eczema, or the person was blind in one eye and he touched his eye and now he can see, and he put his finger in some water and turned it to wine. So this is a complete contradiction of the truth in the Bible and of the Quran, the story of Jesus in the Quran. It is also a direct hit on the story of our prophet and the life of our prophet. Peace and blessing of Allah be upon him. So it is now elevated again, Jesus elevated him and confirmed what people who coming out of the Christian mentality, or people who only have that reference. It is confirming that reference of Jesus as being a godlike figure in the name of al-Islam. See, that's the thing. So my question is, well, what would Jesus be doing? Because I talk to people about it, and they're like, everybody's accepting it because he's speaking Arabic. So they're like, well, I should be cool with it too. I said, if Jesus came back today, what would he be doing? Since we want to talk about the return of Jesus, what would he be doing? And I challenge people. I say, would he be fighting the biggest battle in the world? Of course he would. Would he be helping the people who need the most help in the world? Well, of course he would. Well, you tell me what that battle is and who those people are. There's another movie out called Just Mercy with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan, who played the Killmonger. And we left that movie. I told my wife they should call this movie The Messiah, because this is what Jesus would be doing if he came back. He would go straight to the prisons and free all of the falsely accused black men who were in jail being slaves. He would be fighting against racism, which is the number one issue in the society in the world. So, we're talking about Black history. Those people who we respect and we understand paved the way for us to be where we are today. So we can sit here and not have to worry about the door being busted down. What religion were they practicing? Well, Martin Luther King was a Christian. Well, Rosa Parks was a Christian. Well, so-and-so was a Jew. So-and-so was he was with the nation. He wasn't really a real Muslim. He was. But what is righteousness? If the word Muslim should substitute the word human, the word Muslim means one who follows God's plan. What is God's plan? God's plan is for you to practice righteousness. So, as far as I'm concerned, they were all Muslim. And it's not as far as I'm concerned. As far as the religion is concerned, they were all Muslim because they were born Muslim. And Imam W.D. Muhammad was talking about that being born Muslim, and he gave the example. He said, when you see the little kid, the little bad kid, and they do something good, that's the Muslim in them coming out. When you see that person who's a violent criminal, we seen it, them old school gangsters and stuff, but they be handing out turkeys on Thanksgiving. That's the Muslim in them coming out, the natural Muslim in them. Their environment has taught them or caused them to go astray and go against that. But it is in you. It is designed in you. And there's things that can happen to suppress it, but it's there. So even if you calling yourself something else, it is the Muslim in Dr. Martin Luther King that caused him to stand up and fight for righteousness. It is the Muslim in Marcus Garvey that caused him to do what he was doing. It is the Muslim in Detroit Red or Satan, aka Malcolm X, most properly known as Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, that caused him to come full circle and to accept Al-Islam. So we're talking about Black history, we're talking about Islamic history. Islamic history. We're talking about the history of those who followed Allah's plan, made the contribution, not a contribution, as if there was a contribution somewhere else. Because you take away the Muslims, I'm going to call them, you take them out of the history books. And what does America look like? We still slaves. You leave it up to them, we are still slaves. So they didn't just contribute to society, they were the contribution that turned society into what it is today. And we getting closer and closer to righteousness, is my point. You have people who have piggybacked on the movement of people who are black to fight for their rights, to fight for the right to be. We were fighting for the right to be recognized as human beings. And everybody now is fighting for what they believe is right. In the Quran, there's a surah called Al-Jathiyah, which means the kneeling. And in that surah, yes, the kneeling, it talks about kneeling alongside creation. And that's exactly what we're supposed to do. So when we make our salat, we prostrate. and we kneel with the rest of humanity. And we know that everything in creation is Muslim. So it is the Muslim in us that causes us to kneel alongside the rest of creation. For those of us who came through the first, or the Nation of Islam, the question was asked, what is a Muslim? What is a Muslim man? And the answer is, a Muslim man is a righteous man. So that was the first question that was asked. So that goes straight to the Quran and said, what is righteousness? It's because you got to follow it. You got to follow it to its logical conclusion. And dear brothers and sisters, in closing this last part, we also understand that history, if we didn't understand, when we say the word history, we think about something in the past. But history is a book, and if you notice, when you read history books, there's nothing in there about an individual who was only doing things for themselves. When you hear a history book and you read the people in there, it's about their contribution to society to make things better. The first black person to do this, the first person to do that, the person to discover this, the person to go to the moon. There's nothing in there about the person who had the most shoes, the person who had the most knowledge but never told anyone. There's nothing in there about people with personal gain. But also, history is not just the past. History is also the present. History is an open book. There's still chapters to be written in the history book, is my point. That's why we call Black History Month. We recognize people who just did things not too long ago. And now we talk about Kobe Bryant. He'll be written in the history books as a basketball player. And they'll start to talk about his contribution to the game. Then they'll start to delve into his contributions in society, all the charities and things that he did. And so my kids will be talking about Kobe as far as history. Then their kids will be talking about LeBron. Then their kids will be talking about LeBron's son, and so forth and so on. The point I'm getting to is, this religion, al-Islam, means to follow Allah's plan. The people who followed Allah's plan before we were here are allowed, they followed his plan to allow us to follow Allah's plan. You know, in some countries, if you want to follow Allah's plan, you have to do it in secret, or you'll be persecuted. Right now, like we talked about, in China, they're persecuting those Muslims for being Muslim. They have laws in place in countries where you cannot practice this religion. So the freedoms that you have to practice your religion, we still have the ability to continue to write chapters in the book of history. We have the ability to do so. Not for our personal gain, but so those that come before us can pick the book up and use it as a motivator so that they can practice this religion. So the people who don't know anything about al-Islam, who don't know those names, can look in the history book, and they're going to turn on the television and see another show called The Messiah 2.0 and see a false interpretation of our religion, of Christianity, of Judaism, of Jesus, Muhammad. They're going to see a false interpretation of what Allah intended for human beings to look at as examples on how they should move forward. So we have to be the opposition to falsehood. You can call yourself a Muslim, or you can be a practicing Muslim. You can call yourself a Muslim, or you can be a practicing Muslim, actively striving to establish righteousness. And in closing, the Quran says the believers, men and women, are protectors of one another. They enjoin what is just and forbid what is evil. They observe regular prayers, practice regular charity, and obey Allah and His apostle. On them will Allah pour His mercy, for Allah is exalted in power, wise. In the hadith, our dear Prophet said, a Muslim is not a Muslim unless he wants for his brother what he wants for himself. Please join me in the dua as we close. O Allah, bless Muhammad and the followers of Muhammad. And bless this community that we can practice this religion, establish this religion, build our community, be successful, and always, always remember that Allah is in control. Ameen. Coming to Salah.